Okay, I'd like to welcome you to our April 13th Planning Commission meeting. And so we'll start off with the flag salute, so please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll do the roll call.
Good morning. Let's see. Mr. Arcuri. Here. Mr. Rokuchi.
Here.
Mr. Nader.
Here.
Mr. Sevenson is absent. Mr. Moss.
Here.
And Mr. Johnson.
Yes, here.
Thank you.
Okay. Hey, we have, yeah.
Jennifer Montgomery did, in fact, appoint a new supervisor. His next meeting, his first meeting will be your next meeting. His name is Merrill Haber. He is a resident of Homewood. That's about all I know at this point. Other than that, not much to report other than we are getting busier and busier and busier. So you will become busier and busier and busier over the next year or so. Other than that, I don't have anything unless you have any questions.
Our next meeting, is that the one at the Domes? Is that next time?
So do you know where the next meeting is?
For the Domes.
For the Domes.
We'll be doing a Tahoe project, I think.
Oh, and they'll do video conferencing in for Tahoe. Okay. By the way, it's nice to have you back. I haven't seen you in a while.
Thank you, George. It's
Yes.
good to be back.
Has the Board of Supervisors met since our last meeting?
Believe they have.
Did they vote on the homeless?
No, they haven't done that yet.
Okay.
I think it's at their next meeting.
Okay.
There was an information item about it, and then I think the vote's next time. Anything else that I can answer for you before we move on to our first item?
Sounds good. Thank you,
Thank you.
George. Okay, so we have an opportunity here for the public to comment if it's in regards to something that's not on the agenda today. Not seeing a lot of motion. We'll move on. And, here's somebody. Okay.
I'm Jane Nagry. I just wanted to ask a question. Since we have such a small group participating because it is Easter vacation week and this was scheduled at a bad time for the community because the kids are home or they're on vacation, I'm asking if we can have more than 3 minutes.
Okay, that's really in relationship to today's topic. And so we'll address
but I just
that.
didn't want to use part of my 3 minutes to ask you that.
You just did.
Oh.
Sorry. No, that's okay.
You'll tell me yes or no when I get up?
Okay, I understand. Okay, well, I guess that's it for the public comment. And we have a consent agenda that involves the minutes from action agendas from the last 2 meetings. Items A and B. Anybody want to pull those from the consent calendar? From the public? No? Okay, so I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we'll do the roll call.
Mr. Arcuri.
Yes?
Mr. Rokuchi.
Yes.
Mr. Nader.
Yes.
Mr. Moss.
Yes.
And Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and it looks like we're perfectly on time here for our one agenda item for today, which is subdivision map in Granite Bay. And then we see Christopher Smith is going to do the first presentation on this.
Yeah, but before he starts speaking.
Oh, I got to give you a chance here.
I already told you ahead of time, too. No, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this item, and the reason is that I ran for city council in November, and by FPPC regulations and our ethics training, that if you receive more than $250 from an entity, you can't, and be appointed to a board, an official government board like the Planning Commission, I can't participate in the discussion for at least 12 months. And Mr. LaDuca, who's here representing the applicant, did make that thank you, by the way, Marcus, made the more than $250 contribution. We have a limit of 500 in Roseville, so several people gave me between 250 and 500. So I'm going to have to, by law, I have to leave the room. So I'm taking my coffee. I'm going to go out in the lobby, and maybe that TV will be on. If not, I'll still wait and see what happened.
We'll wake you up after the.
No, I'll be outside. I won't be sleeping. Okay, that's the reason I have to leave. I think it's the first time I've had to actually do that.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, just give me a second here. Well, you can start speaking. I'm not going to listen. Here, I've got my coffee.
Okay, Christopher?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Chris Schmidt with the Planning Services Division. Before you today is a proposal from Eureka Granite Bay LLC for a residential subdivision in Granite Bay. So the project is located at the southwest corner of Eureka Road and Auburn Folsom Road, just south of Douglas Boulevard. Zoning in the area to the south and the west is residential multifamily, a density limitation of 10 units per acre. Across the street along Eureka Road is residential single family, minimum parcel size of about half an acre. Beyond that is commercial and small lot residential. And across the street to the east is a mix of residential and commercial plan development. The project site itself is 4.4 acres gross, 3.5 net acres. The neighbor to the south is the Ridgeview Mobile Home Park, and to the west is South Placer Fire District Station. I should have mentioned the zoning on the subject parcel is residential multifamily with a density limitation of 8 units per acre. So this is the project site. It's pretty disturbed. It was used as a staging area for the Auburn Folsom Road widening project. This is looking across the site towards the fire station where the towers are in the background over here. And you can see the mobile home park in the distance. This is looking back towards Auburn Folsom Road. And this is the Auburn Folsom Road frontage as it exists today. If this site looks familiar to you, it's because we did have an approved project on here. It was approved back in 2007, and the Planning Commission extended the entitlements for this subdivision back in December. It was proposed as 20 single-family detached residences at the time. The current owner purchased the property in late 2015 and did apply for an extension to those entitlements, like I mentioned, last year. So the entitlements currently expire for that detached residential project in February 2019. This current project before you, the applicant submitted in August of last year. So here's a layout of the plan. What's proposed are duplex buildings, condominiums, 2 units each, 28 units, so a slight increase from the 20 single-family lots approved under my share of place. And I'll walk through the details of the subdivision or the proposal in my slides. The applicant is seeking 3 entitlements, a vesting subdivision tentative map to subdivide the parcel into 28-unit condominium multifamily residential development, a minor use permit to do 20 or more units in the multifamily zone district, and 3 variances, a variance to rear and side setbacks, and also the county's parking requirements. Now here's a look at the proposed units, 2 different elevation types. The houses themselves will be between 1,978 and 2,240 square feet with several floor plan variations, for instance, and in one of the plans, the side yard patio is either exposed or covered. The owner will have a private rear backyard, and the front area will be maintained and landscaped by the homeowners association. So they will purchase a lot. So one building will straddle lots 21 and 22 with a center common area wall. The houses themselves have been designed so that the second story is set back for most of the floor plans. This is to provide relief to neighbors because they are seeking a rear yard setback variance. Landscaping is proposed throughout the site. What's circled there are LID, low impact development stormwater basins. And your front yard would be heavily landscaped and maintained by the HOA. Project signs are proposed at the entranceway at the top, and also at the corner of Auburn Folsom and Eureka Road will be a project sign similar to this. This is a preliminary design. There is a common area green space, 36 feet by 160 feet in the center of the project. No active recreation, will basically be a lawn area with barbecue, a shade structure, and adjacent to that will be the centralized mailboxes. An internal walkway adjacent to the proposed guest parking area for internal circulation. And then along the frontages will be sidewalk and also a 4-foot wide multi-purpose trail. And this shows you what those frontages look like today. Not very pedestrian friendly along Eureka Road. And then also Auburn Folsom Road has a shoulder, but not, no sidewalks or trails exist. The applicant is seeking a gated entryway. It does qualify for a gated entrance under the Granite Bay Community Plan, and that shows you what the gated entryway will look like. Nearly the entire project will be surrounded by a masonry a wall, including a portion of the southern property line along where the mobile home park exists, and the entire side where the fire station is. Internally, wood privacy fencing is proposed between the units, and surrounding the common area will be an open metal fence. Sound walls are proposed 6 feet along Eureka Road and 8 feet along Auburn Folsom Road. They'll be heavily landscaped in the frontages. Based upon the noise study, the units highlighted in blue will have to do enhanced acoustical measures on the second story of those units because of the noise along Auburn Folsom Road. And this shows you what those, a cross-section of those frontages along the two roads are. In the backyards along Eureka, 6 to 8 feet here, but from the outside, the public will only see a shorter wall because of the landscaping and berming and the way the project is graded. These units will be sunk, similar to Auburn Folsom Road. 8-foot wall, but from the outside in the traveling public, it'll be a much shorter wall and screened because of the landscaping. So a traffic study was completed. It showed that the project's going to generate 163 trips per day, including 12 in the AM peak hour and 15 in the PM peak hour. And just for reference, Eureka Road today, the volume is about 4,500 cars per day, and along Auburn Folsom, 31,000 per day. And compared to the Mashire Place project, it's actually a reduction in the number of vehicle trips because of the way the two different projects are classified in the traffic models. So detached versus attached units have a lower generation rate. So 8 more units, but less traffic than the Mashire Place project. The traffic study also looked at the Auburn Folsom Eureka Road intersection and the Eureka Road and Barton Road intersections. There will be an increase in delay, but it's minimal, and it doesn't exceed our threshold that would force the project to do off-site improvements. The traffic study also looked at traffic at the project entrance, where queuing at this signal can back up, particularly in the morning rush hour. So what the project is going to be required to do is provide a keep clear zone stripe at their entranceway, and also do some changes to the signal to permit or to allow more right turns here when this is red. So when these have the green light to turn onto Eureka, these cars would get the green light to get off of Eureka. So parking, the applicant is asking for a reduction in the required parking, and we'll go through that. Our ordinance requires 4 off-street parking spots when we have roads less than 32 feet wide, so we don't allow on-street parking. So the residential projects are required to have 4 off-street. And there's a caveat to that, is we don't count garage parking. So the project itself provides 56 driveway parking spots, 2 per unit, and 14 in the parking bay, in 2 parking bays located in the center of the project. So for a total of 70 parking spots, where 112 are required. So that's what the variance is. But if we count the garage parking, they have 126 parking spots where the 112 are required. And what the applicant is proposing to do is add into the CC&Rs that buyers will need to use their cars for parking and not for storage. So that would be enforced by the HOA. And just to look at what other municipalities in the area require as far as parking, we require 112, 4 per unit, much higher than Folsom, Sac County, even higher than what we require in the Tahoe Basin, which is 2.5 per unit. So this project, if in Tahoe Basin, would be required to do 70, which is what they're providing outside of the garages. Rockland, Roseville, and El Dorado County also require less than the 112 that we do. So we're really over-parked as far as our parking standards compared to others in the region. 2 setback variants are requested. The rear setback typically requires 20 feet for 2-story units. The applicant is asking for 10 feet. As I explained before, nearly all of the units have a recessed second story, so it won't be 10 feet from the property line. It's more like 18 feet, nearly 20 feet as required. The side setbacks, we require 7.5 feet on each side, or 15 feet total. The applicant's asking for 5 feet minimum, or 10 feet total between the units. So instead of 15 feet, they're asking for 10 feet. And this shows you that setback, what that setback looks like along the mobile home park. So 10 feet minimum to the first story, but most of these units are recessed, so it's nearly 20 feet. And this isn't to scale, but these units will barely be able to see directly out and see the units. They'll be looking at a wood fence, and the second stories are recessed back from that fence beyond. We did do an environmental review for the project. We did an addendum to the existing mitigated negative declaration for the Mashera Place project. And what we found were there were no new impacts or no new additional impacts that weren't identified previously. No new mitigation was required. So we did an addendum, and that's attached for your review. We did take this to the MAC last week. They did not make a recommendation. There was a motion to approve it, but it only got 2 votes, and there were 2 no votes. So 2-2, and 2 of the members had to recuse themselves. But some of the issues raised by the public and the MAC members were the screening and the landscaping of the sound walls, questions about the traffic impacts, the gated entryway, whether it really qualified under the community plan guidelines, drainage issues across the site, issues about is the parking requirement in the garage is really going to be enforceable, and then some questions about the setbacks being requested. So with that, the Development Review Committee asked for the Planning Commission to adopt the addendum to the Mitigated Declaration and the Mitigation Monitoring Program prepared for the project, approve the vesting tentative subdivision map, approve the minor use permit to allow the residential project larger than 20 units in the residential multifamily district, and approve the 3 variances. The rear yard setback from 20 to 10 feet, reduce side yard setback to 5 feet. It would be 0 where the common wall is, because each unit is on its own lot and shares that common center wall. And then to reduce the amount of required off-street parking spaces from 112 to 70 spaces. And these recommendations are subject to the conditions of approval and findings as modified. So we did hand out some slight changes to the conditions that we would like changed, and then some additions to the conditions, and that was also handed out to you. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I had one. There was a picture that you had up there that showed the overhead utility easement going down Auburn Folsom, and You said you're putting the sound wall up, so is there going to be sidewalk between the sound wall and the utility easement? Yeah, right there. So the sound wall is going to be to the right,
Yes.
and then there's going to be sidewalk between those poles and the easement? Okay. So you're plenty far away from the road?
Yeah,
Okay.
these are going to be relocated. So I imagine, and we're not to that point yet, that these poles would be beyond the sidewalk, so between the sidewalk and the wall. They may be, maybe the project engineer can speak to this, it may be between the curb and the sidewalk.
Oh, so that's going to be placed underground or something?
No, they're not going to be placed underground. They're
Where are you going to move them to?
They're just going to be moved.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions? I might have one.
Okay.
And I think I have this almost figured out. But the drainage that comes down from the north, it looks like it follows along the property line on the west side of this project.
I'll get to that.
And it's kind of, you can see where the cottonwoods and the willows
Yeah.
are growing as a result of that drainage. I would presume that's right on the property line, but I don't know for sure.
It's,
But at any rate, I guess what I notice is, now this project is going to capture the drainage.
correct.
And it says it's going to release that on the southeast corner, which would be the opposite corner of the property. So I guess as the water that's coming down from the north, is that going to be collected and released in the southeast corner, or is there going to be a drainage ditch, or how's this going to be handled with the existing drainage condition?
Engineering can better answer that, but there is an existing culvert, and we did receive a letter from a neighbor on the north side of Eureka Road asking about that. The culvert will be replaced and actually upsized a little bit, and then be captured on site, and it'll be piped to the southern property area, and nearly all of that water will eventually make its way out to Auburn Folsom and stormwater. I believe there is still a small release at the southwest corner, but nearly all the project water being collected in from across the street will either enter the stormwater quality retention basins or be undergrounded and then out to, and held as required to by the permit, and then piped out to Auburn Folsom Road eventually.
Does that include the off-site water that's coming down from the north?
Yeah, they're going to account for the water that's currently coming into the site.
Okay.
Just to follow up to that, Christopher, did I hear you right that that pipe that's under Eureka Road going to the north is going to be upsized a little bit?
My understanding.
Is that what you
yes.
said?
Yeah, from 12 to 18.
12 to 18 inches.
Oh.
Okay, well, that answers my question. Is there any more questions? Okay, so the applicant, would you like to step forward?
Hey, Chris, we should introduce the errata now.
Just give me a second to get down there. So there were some slight changes to conditions 30, 31, 32, and also 34 and 40, and that's been handed out. Just some clarifications, a late review of the conditions, so we agreed to edit these with your approval. And also some additions to the findings under the tentative subdivision map, a new letter F, and then under the variances G and H to better align with what's required under our zoning ordinance under variances.
Okay, thank you.
And,
Okay, applicant.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, we will put copies of the errata on the table for anyone who wants to get them.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, so those of you in the audience, if you'd like to see a copy of the errata sheets, they'll be available to you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Marcus Loduca, 3200 Douglas Boulevard in Roseville. On behalf of John Tattersall and Maverick Partners West, I'm pleased to be before you this evening with a recommendation for your staff for the Eureka Granite Bay project. Chris has done a very thorough job, not just in the presentation, but in the staff report, so I don't need to go over a bunch of details on the project. I did want to highlight a few things. One, this is one of the few parcels in the Granite Bay Community Plan that is both zoned and designated for high-density residential uses. So the issue of the land use itself, there is no issue relative to seeking an increase in density. We're actually proposing a decrease in what's allowed under the base zoning. The base zoning goes on 4.4 acres, and so we would be at 35 units for that, and we're proposing 28 of the duplex units. Again, the idea is to create a very walkable neighborhood. That is why we have narrower streets. We don't have parking to try to create an area that for recreation on site, for barbecue, so for community gatherings. In terms of looking at this site and have it blend in terms of a transition from the mobile home park to the south as you go further to the north. Chris went over the building plans. Again, the idea here is to have a mix of two different types, two models for each plan, ranging in size from a little under 2,000 to roughly 2,250 on Plan A, and then a little about 2,100 to a little over 2,200 on the second plan. Each of the houses will have a covered or uncovered side yard patio, and then they at the homeowner's option, they can also have a patio to the rear yard. This project, if you could probably see it from the illustration and some of the graphics, sits below adjacent roadways, anywhere from 2 to 5 feet at the northerly property line and up to 5 feet along Auburn Folsom Road. So you do have a reduced visibility, as the graphic showed, from the roadways. It's not sitting up and you're looking up at it. It actually sits down, so you don't really see the full 2 stories from adjacent roadways. The roof pitches are also oriented to the street also to try to minimize the massing of the home. So the idea was to try to, for off-site, we don't have any uses to the east, but you have a heavily traveled roadway, and so the idea was to try to reduce any impacts from folks that are traveling on either Eureka or on Auburn Folsom. Again, the sound walls, as the illustration showed, up here, they're 6 feet and 8 feet from the pad elevation, which sits below the street. So again, the idea is you're not going to see tall walls on top of berms from the street. You're actually going to be looking at a downward, so you don't see the full effect of 6 and 8 feet from either roadway. On the Auburn Folsom side, my client proposed adding an additional, so he pushed into the site, adding an additional 5 feet of landscaping beyond what the county requires. And the idea was to try to create a lusher setback for that heavily traveled road. As staff mentioned, there's a lot of volume of cars on that roadway now, and that was to enhance that. That's one of the reasons for the setback variance in the rear yard for the second story, which is to really try to affect greater landscaping for the traveling public, because that's what people are going to see. Also, one note is the community plan calls for a decomposed granite trail along both frontages. We have both a decomposed granite trail and a sidewalk, and so we're actually what we're proposing is actually in excess of what the community plan calls for to try to enhance the pedestrian use of both those frontages. As staff pointed, we have 2 water quality detention basins on the site. There's also underground detention. So to address the chair's comments relative to drainage from the north, we're not only upsizing the culvert. Again, drainage comes down, and most storm events gets routed toward the southeast corners you mentioned. In a 100-year storm event, there will be a portion that will still go out to the southwest. Anything over what the pipe sizing is addressing. But again, we have both at-grade storage in the 2 detention basins and also underground detention in a vault So it actually should help both our neighbors at the fire district, but also our neighbors to the south in the mobile home park in terms of what they see in most storm events. So the idea was actually to improve the situation if we could.
Marcus, where is that vault going to be?
I would ask Wood Rogers, Tim Denham from Wood Rogers, to tell us where the vault is.
Sure, if you could repeat your question for me.
Where's the vault going to be?
So, you have a laser pointer for me? Oh, here. So there's actually an underground 48-inch kind of oversized pipe that serves as a vault here on the south side. We're upsizing the 12-inch to 18-inch here, but we have a CDS unit to pre-treat that water that's coming from off-site from that shed to the north. And then we're capturing our water on site, taking it into water quality basins, and then, letting it kind of throttle out to the 18-inch storm drain that's over here in
So it's underneath the roadway.
Excuse me?
The vault is underneath the roadway.
Yeah, it's underneath the roadway, correct. Okay.
Again, in terms of addressing some of the issues that might be raised in the public hearing relative to parking, again, I think the illustration showed, and the staff report had a good table in there, and you also had it in your presentation today. Placer County's parking requirements are way in excess of every other jurisdiction in the region for the most part, particularly adjacent jurisdictions such as Roseville and Folsom. It's way above. It's not just like a few percent. It's almost double in some cases, and it is double in several others. The idea here is to be able to not just provide our guest parking, have driveway, but require folks to park their cars in their garages. So if you count those, which is what the variance is, allows the 70, but we're counting those through conditions of approval. I think it's condition 80B, or maybe it's 80H, for the CCNRs to be able to require people to park in their garages and allow the HOA to enforce that. That works. Jurisdictions throughout the region are using this. I lived in such a complex that's adjacent to Granite Bay on Sierra College Boulevard at Olympus, called Aviana. Again, very narrow streets. There are no sidewalks throughout it. They are a townhome product, and the requirement was you had to park your cars, and there were no driveways in that, and you were required to park your cars. And so what happened is people parked their cars and got storage units because there's a storage facility down the street. But again, that's what happens, and it works. It works throughout the region. And the idea, especially with the new water quality standards that we have facing us from the state and the requirements that are coming down to the county and cities, is you're trying to reduce your impervious surface if you can. And so this helps in that regard to not just have an additional 52 or 42 spaces on the site when you don't, or 52 spaces on the site just as parking so people could put storage in their garages. So the idea would be to reduce your impervious surface, and that's what the project helps to do with what we're proposing. Again, in terms of the side yard, the variances, I mentioned the parking. The side yard variance is to make the second story variance adjacent, the same as the first story. So instead of 7.5 feet, it's 5 feet on the one side. The idea there was to avoid having to go to fourplex units, which would have much greater massing, and to be able to have that setback be a little bit less and therefore go to duplex units. And that variance will allow us to do so. The rear yard, again, in most cases, because of the way the second story is set up, most of the units are at or right around 20 feet, but you need a formal variance to be able to, say, go to 10 feet. But the way the buildings are designed, the pitch of the roofs is really toward the front. So you're not seeing the second story all the way back to the 10-foot line, and you're sitting there with just a sheer wall. The idea was to push those forward, but we do need to formally process a variance to be able to do that. Chris mentioned the traffic study. This came up at the MAC. You might hear it again today. The International Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, they don't just pluck numbers out of the air. They do lots of studies on lots of projects. They look at, sometimes it could be dozens, sometimes hundreds of projects to see what the trip generation are for a whole host of land uses. That's how they come up with those trip rates. The Placer County, along with, I believe, every jurisdiction that I know of in this region, if not the state, uses those trip generation rates. to be able to say what the trip generations are for single-family detached versus townhomes versus apartments and that kind of thing for residential. So you actually have a slight decrease in daily and peak hour trips. There were no significant impacts in the project that's approved on site right now, the Machera Place. So we're generating fewer trips, ergo we have the same less than significant impacts. One part of the traffic study that I think needs emphasis is both access and entry were looked at in great detail to look at turning movements, to make sure that there would not be a queuing problem back from Auburn, Folsom, and Eureka. At the same time that you would also have turning movements into the site, whether a left-hand turn lane was needed or not, and the analysis came back and it was not. The other aspect of the gate that I want to mention, two things. One, both the pedestrian gate is going to be open from dawn to dusk as required by the community plan, but the vehicle gate will also be open at dawn to dusk. They will be closed at dusk. The fire district offices, not just the fire station nearby, they do have meetings there. They do have sometimes community gatherings, and the idea is that and those are in the evening. And the idea is to avoid having people thinking, well, there's not enough parking there. I'll just drive into the subdivision and try to park where there's our guest parking or where there's no parking on the streets because it's convenient. It's right next door. This commission and the Board of Supervisors has already dealt with this type of gate in the community plan. Unless there's only one possibility for an entrance onto a major arterial, this commission and the board in Grayhawk 3 a year ago this month, in that case it was Sierra College Boulevard, did not have the entrance on Sierra College Boulevard, but placed it on Eureka Road to avoid having another vehicle entrance and exit on Sierra College Boulevard. Here, we would be entitled to have a entrance on Auburn Folsom Road. No one wants a entrance on Auburn Folsom Road, particularly downstream from that intersection. And so the entrance that's proposed here is in the exact location as the entrance for Machera Place. It's in the same spot. We're proposing gates instead of having on Auburn Folsom, proposing it here. The other aspect of this is we spent a lot of time with the fire district, not just on the deceleration lane taper in front of their property, which is also required of Machera Place that we're doing here, but also the widths of the internal streets, the turning movements, and the gate. And they were fine with all that. So there are no issues from the fire district relative to the layout of the streets, having the gate there, the access being what it is. Finally, again, the addendum, again, secret provides for, rather than redoing documents when you don't necessarily have to look at if there's an approved project, approved environmental document, to see whether there's new significant impacts that weren't previously analyzed, or the impacts you do have here are more severe, more substantial than they were previously analyzed, and that is not the case with the project at all. So with that, we'd ask for your approval today of the project as presented. Our project team is here to answer any questions that the commission might have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've got some questions. Marcus, I've got two questions. I'm
Yeah.
not sure you'll be able to answer them, but I'm sure one of your people will. You mentioned that there's going to be, in addition to the concrete sidewalks, that there's going to be a DG trail of some sort. Now, where is that going to be?
If we can, I don't know if we can pull up, is there a slide that shows the trail location? Maybe Tim Devlin can answer.
Yeah, it's dashed on this exhibit, but on this board here, you can see it's located at back of sidewalk.
So it's near the sidewalk.
Back of sidewalk along Eureka and Auburn Folsom Road. So you can see this, it's hard to see, but there's a dash line there that reserves.
So what's the benefit of having it kind of next to the concrete sidewalk?
Well, the DG trail is called for in the community plan, and so because it's called for in the community plan, we're complying with the community plan as opposed to processing an amendment to the community plan. And the idea was to have the sidewalk to be able to provide that access, also to have it right adjacent to the landscaping there, providing a path that way.
Seems somewhat redundant, but
we would agree.
The other question I had was that one of the comments in the letters that we got was concern about these becoming rentals. Is there any restrictions in the CC&Rs of these becoming rentals?
There's no restrictions, as there has not been in any project in Placer County or, to my knowledge, in the region where there's a restriction to that case. I mean, these are not 800 square foot condos or 1,000 square foot condos where people are buying them at a very cheap price. These are in the almost 2,000 to 2,200 square foot homes. We see a different market. A lot of times you could see downsizing. You can see single parents after divorce being a buy there, so they don't want to have the yard. A lot of millennials looking to get in the marketplace sometimes don't want a big yard, sort of the stay and go kind of thing. They're onward to their lives and do not want a large yard to take care of, and also don't have to maintain their front yard. So the idea here is we see this as a purchase project, but there's no restriction in the CC&Rs, as there has not been in any project that we're aware of in this county.
Well, it's certainly up to the HOA or the CC&Rs to do that, regardless of what the county's restrictions may be.
Yeah, and the CC&Rs can say something, but again, we wouldn't try to restrict that because someone might buy it and provide it as to their children and rent it to their children. That would bar that if you had such a restriction, and you don't want to be going back and constantly coming back to the commission to revise a condition or two on something like that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, at this time I'll open it up for public comment. And so you can come forward. And as long as you don't take the full hour, we'll let you take the
I
time.
think I was 20 seconds over the limit. Okay. My name is Jane Negri, and I would like to first address the request for gates. The previous project that you approved with an entrance on Eureka Road had no gates. This project has always had an entrance on Eureka Road, according to the plans shared with our community, and now it is asking for gates. We spent over 2 years working on the Granite Bay Community Plan for the criteria for gates. This project does not qualify. As stated in the plan on page 113, criteria 28C, it must be directly accessed off a major arterial roadway. On page 137, table 9.7, 1-A shows Eureka Road from Wellington to Auburn Folsom is a minor arterial roadway. And I just got hit with this information that they're thinking they're going to put the speed limit up to 50 miles an hour. Maybe that's to get the gate, I don't know. But the other, Grayhawk 3 that was referenced, at that point, Eureka Road is a 4-lane road. The Eureka Road here is a 2-lane rural road. The proponent stated at MAC that it was necessary to have the gates for overflow parking for firehouse events. I attend some of the meetings there. They're local meetings, very few people attend. When the fire department has an event, they schedule it off-site. The community spoke out loud and clear at the MAC that the gates would endanger the safety of the neighborhood as the traffic already stacks up on Auburn Folsom. This development is next to the Fire Station 17, which is one of our busiest stations in South Placer. The community is concerned that emergency services will be detained if traffic is also backed up trying to get in and out of gates. With the dawn to dusk, I can see that happening, as long as that stays forever on this development. But the request is in conflict with our community plan. One of our new MAC members was astounded that the proponent was asking for a number of setback variances in order to accomplish the density they want. The 8 units per acre are the maximum allowed, but it is not a guarantee. The project does not meet any of the criteria for which the variances need to be granted. I would ask that you uphold the county's plan and only grant variances where they meet the county standards. The 2015 traffic study did not include the intersection of Auburn-Folsom-Eureka Road. Our new traffic study is underway now. The calculations for this project conclude that the density increase from 20 single-family houses to 28 duplex units will decrease the traffic by 28 trips. How can adding more people and more cars decrease traffic by 28 trips? The project is also asking for a decreased number of parking spaces. There is a condition on the project that prohibits using the garage for storage. However, the 2-car garages may not accommodate the extended cab pickup trucks that are popular in our area. The neighbors are very concerned about overflow parking on their streets, as there are only 14 visitor parking spaces. If these units are used as rentals, it would compound the problem, adding more vehicles per unit. There is another duplex development in Granite Bay that has a condition that only certain percentages can be used as rental units. When we asked for the dimensions, the inside dimensions of the garage at the MAC, we did not receive that information. And as far as the DG pathways being included in our Granite Bay master plan, we wanted to discourage sidewalks. The whole point of living in Granite Bay is to have a rural area. So we would definitely be on the side of the DG plan, but to add a sidewalk next to it defeats one of the main goals in our Granite Bay community plan, is to keep it rural. So our neighbors and our community would like you to not approve the new variances, and I am just shocked by this information we got today. I mean, the MAC knows nothing about it, the community knows nothing about it. I think you're not being fair to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Hello. I am a property owner, and my property is located 4 houses to the west, 4 properties to the west of the proposed development.
Could you give us your name, please?
My name is Cynthia Litzko. Thank you very much. 6762 Eureka Road. As it stands today, Eureka Road has become a shortcut basically from Auburn, city of Auburn, for folks trying to get over to Folsom. They don't want to deal with the traffic on Douglas, so they're zipping down Eureka Road. And I am curious to know what the proposed speed limit will be for Eureka today. Because as it sits, next door to me, there is another development coming along, and I wanted to mention that. Because we look at the Granite Bay community plan, and we know development is coming. It's going to happen. However, if we look at the overall community plan and we think about Eureka Road as being a 2-lane, not a main source of traffic as Auburn, Folsom, and Douglas, if we're going to keep that section of Granite Bay, which right now is mostly 1- and 2-acre lots and horse properties, we have the house next door to me has been 1-acre lot has been bought, and behind my property is another multifamily zone property. It's an extension of the mobile home park. That's going to be coming along to where they're going to want yet another gate coming onto Eureka Road. So we have a 40% increase in families going into the corner. I'll look at it that way. And now we're going to have a very large development behind my place that's going to come out onto Eureka Road. So if you want to look at traffic studies, what is the overall view and what is the plan for Granite Bay as a community? Or is it going to remain rural, or is it all going to be built out with sidewalks? Because, as she mentioned, it is correct. If you have horse property, you're riding down decomposed. You're not riding on a sidewalk. So thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate your consideration of what the overall view is of where do we want to be in Granite Bay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? I see discussion, but nobody standing up. So with that, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and give the applicant a chance to answer some of the comments.
A couple things. First off, on the traffic impact study, not studying Auburn, Folsom, and Eureka. I'm looking at page 1 of the study dated March 8th, 2017, which is in your packet. Among the intersections being studied at the direction of county staff are Auburn, Folsom, and Eureka, and the entire document talks about Auburn, Folsom, and Eureka, the queuing analysis, the turning lane requirements, all that is based on Auburn, Folsom, and Eureka, so I'm not sure why there's a comment that the traffic study didn't look at that. Relative to the gated entry, again, the condition about dawn to dusk, again, it's a condition of approval. It'll also be in the CC&Rs. So you'd violate the Subdivision Map Act by not closing those down the road. So they have to come back to the Planning Commission if that was a request. It's not something that can just be done. The idea was to, between dawn and dusk, remove any issues about the gate. The fire district has no issues with this. They may be a very busy fire district, but they have no issues with the turning movements. The idea of the keep clear zone isn't a mitigation measure. It was just added as a suggestion so that people would be looking at that. There is not a queuing issue according to the traffic analysis, and we spent an awful lot of time on the queuing analysis to make sure that there were going to be no issues relative to cars backing up, heading east on Eureka to Auburn, Folsom, or turning into the site. There's very few left-hand turns into the site during peak hour. But even then, again, there just wasn't an issue, and it wasn't anything that generated the need for a left turn lane. In fact, it was like such a small percentage, it wouldn't even be considered. The issue relative to, I think, on the interpretation of the community plan as a matter of board direction on that relative to what this commission approved last April in Grayhawk 3, I think it's clear. That's the interpretation that the county has made. And it's consistent with what we propose is consistent with that interpretation about not having additional access points near intersections on major arterials, particularly one that has now been widened to 4 lanes and is carrying a great amount of regional traffic on Auburn Folsom. So again, we think that all the issues have been addressed, not only in your conditions of approval as they've been edited today. The design speed, we don't propose design speeds. That's design speed comes from the county based on its requirements and its standards for Eureka Road. They're not proposed by the applicant. So that condition of approval that you have before you, I think it's condition 32, that's what's proposed in terms of the design speed to be able to design the roadway relative to future improvements and those kind of things. So it wasn't something the applicant proposed. We're in agreement with the conditions as amended. And again, we would ask for you to approve the project as presented to you today and as conditioned by your staff with the errata sheet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, yeah, go ahead. I see it looks like our, did you have a comment, Karen? Oh, okay. I saw one come in and I guess not. Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission. And any discussion or further questions that you may have?
I have one question relative to the sidewalk, Marcus. If it isn't necessary, why are we putting in a sidewalk and the DG?
I would defer to ESD staff on that.
Okay.
Are you asking about the redundancy of 2 surfaces, or?
Yeah, since there isn't a requirement within the MAC or any place else, why are we requesting a sidewalk?
Well, the sidewalk is a requirement, and I think Chris can touch on that in the
So I'm
community plan.
misunderstanding.
The sidewalk is a requirement.
Okay.
The EG is a separate requirement of the parks.
Okay, I misunderstood that. I didn't know
yeah.
it was a requirement. Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
But follow-up question, you say the sidewalk is a requirement, but you know, it sounds like the community plan wants a DG sidewalk. So
Parks pushed for both, and planning concurred about the sidewalk. This area of Granite Bay is maybe one of the most walkable areas. You're close to the shopping and the medical offices and the other services to the north. So the anticipation was the residents here and to the south and to the west would be walking to those services, so having the sidewalk was ideal. The DG path is required in the community plan. It was requested to be kept because, believe it or not, and it seems crazy, but there are horses that make their way from the large rural areas to the west over to the lake, and the DG path is just better for the horses. And frankly, even for pedestrians, some people that run don't like running on sidewalks, so DG path is actually better. So having that redundancy, instead of a 6-foot sidewalk, it was reduced to 4 feet, so 4 feet for each. So it was a little bit of a compromise with the county and the applicant.
At Christopher, as you go north, are there other sidewalks? I assume as you get closer to the shopping area, there is.
There is. So I think immediately to the north, there may be a sidewalk, but maybe not. It's one of those things as we get it as development comes. To the west, if there is a proposal that may be coming in for development of the western portion of that mobile home park, we would ask probably for sidewalk and DG path also to start making those connections. There is a sidewalk in front of the fire station today.
Okay, I have a question, Chris. Let me see, normally, at least it's my understanding, once you, I understand that the fire department is okay with this proposal and the idea that, with the gate and that it's open during the daylight and that kind of stuff. But, there's kind of, at least I've perceived in the past, there's kind of a standing understanding that once you exceed a certain number of units in a development, that you have some kind of evacuation gated or whatever.
Emergency vehicle access.
Yeah, and in this case, we don't have that. So I guess, is that a variance that we're dealing with, or what are we dealing with here?
If they were happy as proposed, and I don't know what their standard is as far as length.
The threshold is 40 units.
4 units?
40. 40, yeah.
Okay.
I also think it could be length of cul-de-sac too. If it's one entrance with a big long road, they always ask for an EVA.
Okay, I don't know if I heard that very well. What'd you say?
Besides the unit count, sometimes when it's one entrance to a subdivision and it's a very long road, they're going to want a second emergency vehicle access point, just in case the entrance is blocked.
So the county standard is 40 units before you...
We usually defer to fire, and I'm not sure what that...
That's a fire district requirement. We do also in the land development manual, engineering and surveying reviews, there's a little chart, density versus a length of a dead end road, and this doesn't meet that criteria to need a second access.
Okay. So, yeah, the fire department's okay with this, I understand. I just wanted to get that question out there, sorry. Any more?
If the questions are done, Christopher, could you put the recommendations back up, please? Thank you.
Okay, commission members, are we ready for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, we're ready for a motion. I would make the following motion. Planning Commission adopt the addendum to the McCarra Place mitigated negative declaration and mitigated...
Is your microphone on?
I don't think your mic's on.
Oh.
There you go.
Start over again. I would make the motion that the Planning Commission adopt the addendum to the McCarra Place mitigated negative declaration and mitigated monitoring program for the Eureka at Granite Bay project as set forth in Attachment E and supported by the following findings in the staff report and the errata. I think that's, we're breaking these up separate, correct? Okay.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Arcuri?
Yes.
Mr. Okuchi is abstained. Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
And Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would further move that the Planning Commission approve a tentative subdivision map to allow for the subdivision of 4.4 acres into a 28-unit condominium multifamily residential development consisting of half-plex units, supported by the following findings and the facts set forth in the accompanying staff report and the errata.
Second.
Okay, motion and second, roll call.
Mr. Arcuri?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would further move that we approve a minor use permit to allow for residential project larger than 20 units in the multifamily residential zoning district supported by the following findings in the report and the errata.
And subject to the revised conditions set forth in the errata.
Correct, subject to the errata sheet with the revised conditions.
Okay, second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll go ahead and do a roll call.
Mr. Arcuri?
Yes?
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would motion that we approve variances to, 1, reduce the rear yard setback requirement for two-story structures in an RM zone district from 20 feet to 10 feet. 2, reduce the side yard setback requirement for two-story structures in an RM zone district from 7 feet to 6 feet, from 7 feet 6 inches to 5 feet, 0 feet where condominium half-plex units share a common wall property boundary. And 3, to reduce the amount of required off-street parking spaces from 112 spaces to a total of 70 spaces. And the zoning ordinance citing that, supported by the findings in the report and the errata.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Arcuri?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
And Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I think we're through the list, right?
I believe so.
Okay, so this is approved. Let me see, for those of you that may be interested in appealing this project, it will cost $564, and you have 10 days to submit that to the planning department here. Okay, thank you, folks.